Hey loves, it's Britt, and in this video I'm going to talk about what it means to have your natal Saturn in Gemini. So what is Saturn? Saturn is the planet of karma, difficulties, hard lessons and challenges, but it eventually becomes an area of mastery because we've had no choice but to work so very hard at the issues of the sign and house placement and aspects of Saturn in our natal birth chart. So Saturn in Gemini is actually a very good place to have Saturn. Meanwhile, after I just literally cried on my Saturn in Cancer video about how hard it is. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not crying, you're crying. Saturn in the water signs is very emotionally difficult. Saturn in the air signs actually functions very well because Saturn is exalted in Libra and co-rules Aquarius. So Saturn in Gemini has this effect of like a triple trine, okay? And so it actually is one of the better positions of Saturn. Not that it doesn't have its difficulties. We're going to definitely talk about those. Saturn is difficult in every sign, don't worry. But Saturn in the air signs adds a very mentally grounded influence to the person, and they actually are able to think very clearly. And Saturn in Gemini takes away the superficiality of Gemini, or the fickleness, like so of, traditional Gemini placements. They can have that, kind of two-faced or fickle, all over the place behavior. But when Saturn is placed in Gemini, it allows the higher side of Gemini to be freed. Okay, so what does that look like? It looks like a very scientific mind, a mind that is capable of long hours of research. So this placement is typical of like the scholar, of hold on, I'm just going to plug my laptop in. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but it's starting to make that noise, like it's doing a lot of work. It might be because I'm uploading Saturn in Cancer as we speak, and it's like doing too many things right now. Anyways, so someone with Saturn in Gemini would be capable to do many things at once in a very grounded, stable way, unlike this laptop. Okay, so yeah, this is really common for people that have spent a lot of time studying, university degrees, and like this is what Saturn in Gemini favors, is that type of study. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be like university. It could be like that you're an amazing astrologer because you are actually able to sit with a book and just read the whole book because you have that power of concentration with having Saturn in Gemini. And then you also have the intelligence of Gemini being able to be expressed with Saturn in Gemini. So where the difficulty comes in with this placement is the mind can be very negative. So negative thoughts are common. There's, especially if Saturn is afflicted and there's lots of difficult aspects in mutable signs, like mutable squares. This is the mind that, you're constantly suspicious. You're constantly looking for all the facts and figures, and, like you're very intelligent. You're very mentally capable, but it can end up being like, this is a person that's overly sarcastic or overly able to find the flaw in everyone's communication and everybody's idea and everything that's going on. And so untamed or untrained, this person can end up being very negative and very miserable, because the inhibition, the difficulty with Saturn here is like the third house and the sign of Gemini. I'm talking about Saturn and Gemini, not Saturn in the third house, but it does kind of correlate. So like the energy of Gemini is that ability to like flit around and like be social with the neighbor, and like, the small talk and talking with the mailman and like the siblings, and, just having like these kind of lighthearted, meaningless exchanges, really. That's the third house, and Gemini does rule over that. Saturn in Gemini finds that very difficult. they might even find it almost impossible to like have small talk with people. That is the big difficulty here, is that they can really be so serious in the mind that it's difficult for them to just have that kind of energy. So they can be very, concentrated in one place. Like they can have difficulty with moving around a lot, or just being like lighthearted and natural in their communicating. Like sitting in an, like, okay, being in an elevator with another person that they don't know for like an extended period of time. Like, let's say the elevator like broke down or something, like that is like you're torturing a person with Saturn and Gemini to put them in that situation. So the difficulty here is kind of with like humaning, like there's these like normal human exchanges that we all have to deal with, right? We all have to, make small talk with our neighbors, or go in an elevator, or, like talk to the mailman, like this kind of stuff. It's just like fingernail scratching on a chalkboard to Saturn and Gemini when they haven't dealt with their Saturn wound and difficulty, right? So there can be like a very calculated expression where they can lack that kind of flightiness, or like, that ability to just kind of move around that Gemini is known for. And they can be like overly serious, and like the reason for their seriousness is actually a deep shyness. It's actually a deep uncomfortability with those types of exchanges. They feel, even though they're so mentally incredibly brilliant, they actually have a deep fear and feeling of being stupid, and being, maybe they were ridiculed for their ideas when they were very young. They were told, you're stupid, that's stupid, or whatever, when they had this brilliant idea as a kid. And now deep down they feel like they're so inadequate, and so they actually end up, studying more than the person with Saturn in a different sign, right? Because like they're determined to not be stupid and to not feel so inadequate. So is that making some sense of what can happen here? Is that they have these deep fears of being seen as mentally inadequate, or like their ideas aren't good enough, or like they're just, the way that I sense it is like they don't feel like a real human. Like they don't feel like they can't just do those human things. They're much more comfortable, studying and like in the not in the social world, they can feel very, very lonely. And, that's one thing about Saturn and the air signs, is that mentally they're so brilliant, they're so focused, they're so like different from the rest of the world. They can feel very left out and very lonely as far as like those more casual human interactions go. Like that's where they struggle. Whereas, it's different with Saturn in, like I say, Scorpio or Cancer. They feel very deeply inadequate in like emotional related, like intense emotional, intimate exchanges. But it's actually different with Saturn and the air signs. They feel more inadequate in these more casual situations where, it's just the day-to-day exchange, or they're being, they feel inadequate for their ideas being not heard, or being told that they were stupid or something when they're young. So that's kind of where the root of the wound is. And there can also be, what did one of my books say, or what does Liz Green say? Liz Green is like the god on Saturn. Her Saturn book is so good. And she says that Saturn and Gemini, there's a struggle with like the intake, the inhale and the exhale of air, because that's also something Gemini rules, is the lungs, right? So there could actually even be lung difficulties, breathing difficulties, something to do with this area, because there's an inhibition. There's like Saturn's karmic energy on that inflow and outflow of oxygen intake. So that could actually be translated to something physical, or it could just mean that these people have a hard time with that exchange of just how much do I speak and how much do I listen, how much do I intake the goodness of life and how much do I exhale. Like there's some sort of block there with that natural flow of breathing and oxygen. So they can feel very just insecure about these kind of things, like with their intelligence, with their mind. There's a lot of like mental tension, right? And it could be correlated to that need to just have some proper breathing. You know, maybe they haven't been relaxed enough, they haven't been breathing properly, they need to just calm down and relax and let that tension out. Whenever we're seeing Gemini energy, we need to get that energy out. And I think the best way to really express this placement is like what I said, through some type of long study of something. And also, they can be amazing teachers with this placement. They have a way of explaining things that, you know, they could be very funny too, and also maybe kind of sarcastic, or maybe if there's afflictions, they could be actually a little bit like mean about the way they explain things, you know, putting people down kind of. But that's only, you know, a certain type of person would be like that. But the way that they explain things, they can really captivate, and they can really make complex ideas understandable to people because of their ability to ground down that wisdom into something physical, into something practical. Like another good use of this would be like writing a book. So that kind of thing. It's speaking, even though they, you know, public speaking, maybe that's a fear, but that's something that would be a good use of this energy as well. So yeah, I guess the main points about this placement is it's very good. It's a really good placement to have Saturn, even though, you know, there's difficulty with the mind and with, you know, feeling so awkward in these types of social situations and feeling kind of like this outsider. But there's this incredible mental brilliance and ability to be this scholar, to be this genius, and to be an amazing teacher or writer or anything to do with the air sign, right? Like you getting those ideas out there, right? With Saturn and Gemini, that's something they can really do well at, is actually taking their ideas in their mind and letting them be expressed out into something concrete, practical, physical, like an actual book, right? So I hope that was helpful. Yeah, the next one I should do is Saturn and Libra. Get through the air sign Saturn. So anyways, let me know your experiences of this placement. I would love to hear from you guys, and I do offer one-on-one sessions. I do a personal natal chart soul purpose reading, and I also do a relationship synastry compatibility session as well. So you can book at the link below, and we'll talk soon, you guys. Thanks for watching.